Hi Partha sir, how are you?
I'm good, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
I'll go out, come back after some time. I'll be back in 5 minutes. hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Right. Is my backdrop okay? I think you should mute the video.
Yeah. Sir, can you please mute it? Yeah.
Yep. I've got my backdrop as well.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so welcome everybody to this 12th day of Global Communication Education Conclave, GSEC. This conclave has been initiated by Global Media Education Council, GMEC, which is the first of its kind council of media educators, researchers, professionals, and policymakers. In GSEC, we have reserved evenings for academic discourses and enriching discourse with a global perspective. And all our sessions till date have really been impressive. As Vice President of GMEC, I have been part of this academic endeavor since the time this idea was mooted by Professor Ujol Chaudhary. I find myself lucky to be part of this galaxy of media educators in this forum. In today's session, I'm fortunate to share the company of Mr. Subhash Kamath, who is steering the Advertising Standards Council, Dr. Mangesh Karandikar, a senior media educator, Mr. Damien Cummings from National University of Singapore, and Professor Ujol Chaudhary, the most dynamic person I have ever met in my life. My special assignment in this session is to introduce the moderator of the day. So let me introduce Professor Partha Pratim Samant, an experienced program chairperson with a demonstrated history of working in the higher education industry. He is skilled in designing, media management, and film production. Professor Partha is a strong professional with a master's degree focused on film production and marketing from University of Mumbai. He is the former academic chairperson of International School of Business and Media, Pune, and audiovisual faculty of Symbiosis Institute of Media and Communication, Pune. Professor Partha has made advertising, documentary, and corporate films for reputed brands and production houses. He has been teaching and conducting workshops on photography, cinematography, lighting, and TV production. Currently, he is working with Devi Prasad Goenka Management College of Media Studies, with an additional responsibility as chairperson, program in charge of PGDM, PGDP, and MACJ. So I hand over the rein of today's program to Professor Partha Pratim Samant. Professor Partha.
Thank you so much, sir. I will start the formal introduction and then we will take it further. 1 second. Yeah. We are all born creative. Each of us perceives the world differently, like our own individual fingerprints. Each are different from each other. The courage then to express your perception, our perception to the world defines who the artist is. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, to this magnificently glorious evening, the galaxy of intellectuals, honorable guests, professions, teachers, and beloved students. The scent is the air clearly smells of liberty, kindness, humanity, and everything precious and beautiful. At the very onset, I am prompted to use John Dewey's quote, education is not preparation for life, education is life itself. It's an honor itself to honor this charming and beautiful audience today here. I am Partha Pratim Samanta, Assistant Professor.
Please continue.
Assistant Professor, Film Branding at DGMC and Working Committee member of GMAC, welcomes you all on behalf of the whole team of GMAC and Principal of DGMC in today's event, Global Communication Education Conclave, organized by GCEC. The theme for today's event is culture and its reflection on advertising. GMEC, GCEC official partners are Media and Education Skill Councils, MS, MESE, IAMCR, and Makhanlal Chaturvedi Institute. Today's session has been organized in association with Devi Prasad Goenka Management College of Media Studies, RSET Campus, Mumbai. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me an immense pleasure to introduce Professor Ujol Kumar Chaudhary, who has been constantly developing education, process, and policies to meet curriculum goals. Professor Chaudhary is the Secretary of Global Media Education Council, a global professional body of media educators, practitioners, media institute, and departments of university committed to the cause of nurturing talents. He is the former Pro Vice Chancellor of Adamas University, former Dean of Symbiosis International University, Symbiosis Institute of Media and Communication, Whistling International Mumbai, and Amity University. May I now request Professor Ujol Kumar Chaudhary to kindly deliver the welcome address.
I really like this sentence that you have just now spoken. I heard it earlier also. Please excuse me for my voice. I'm speaking from Kathmandu from 11-degree temperature and had developed this sore throat. I'm here for the last 8 days. Today is my last night. Anyway, I like this sentence that Partha just now used. Education is not preparation for life. Education is life itself. Advertising is not just a reflection of culture. Advertising is a culture by itself. It sets in pattern. It sets in motion a culture by itself. Very much eager to listen to Subhashji and Damien and Sukanyaji and many others. Obviously, my dear former colleague and friend, Dr. Mangesh, who shall be awarded today. So, as has been already introduced by a very dear colleague who considers that I'm supposed to be a very inspirational person, I don't know how and why, Dr. Ambrish, he has just now introduced Global Media Education Council. This council has membership from 9 countries of the world, vice presidents from 9 countries of the world, and our Indian vice president is Dr. Ambrish. And this council has already created reasonable waves through the 75 evenings of media education, media and communication thematic discussions that's going on. And going on not only among academicians, practitioners, academicians, researchers together. So that's how you'll find, and policymakers together. Why Mr. Kamath is here? He influences the policy as a leader of ASCI, Advertising Standards Council of India, in a way. And he also influences practice because he's a very senior practitioner, as you will very soon know. GCEC, Global Communication Education Conclave, is the first initiative of GMEC. Is the global launch, and we have been having one speaker from abroad every time. Today we are very happy to have Damien Cummings from Singapore with us. And every time we have been having someone or the other from some country or the other, senior person speaking about communication. We are looking forward to Daniel's talk today. 75th year, and that's why 75 evenings. And the film that came, 7-8 minutes long film, has already given the introduction. I will not take much time now other than welcoming you all. We are looking forward to an evening of understanding advertising, branding, and culture in a context which is considerably qualitatively different from what it was pre-pandemic. Today is a new world, a brave new world. Back to you, Partho, Professor Partho Samanto, the moderator of the
Thank you so much. Thank you, sir. Education is no allegation of knowledge, but the formation of the character. Thank you so much, sir, for putting your words. I now take this opportunity to introduce our chief guest of the evening, Mr. Subhash Kamath, sir. Sir has been in the business of building brands for 32 years, 22 of which have been in senior leadership role. Over those years, he has worked in renowned creative agencies in India like Ogilvy, Trikaya Gray, Ambience Publicis, and Bates 141. He was one of the founding managing partner of BBH India in 2009 and currently serves as the CEO of BBH and Publicis Worldwide India, part of Publicis Group. He is passionate about brand strategy and creativity and loves to involve himself deeply in his client businesses. believing that true creative thinking is designed to solve business problems. Sir currently also serves as the chairman of ASCII, the Advertising Standards Council of India, and is a strong believer of self-regulations, often saying, with great creative power comes great responsibility. He is happily married with 2 children, plays in a classic rock and blue band called Wanted Yesterday, and spent his time cooking for his family and composing his original song. Now, may I request Subhash Kamath sir to kindly address the gathering.
Good evening, everyone. I hope I'm audible. I have been around in this industry for a fairly long time. I think this is my 33rd year or 34th year, and I've seen a lot of changes that this industry has gone through. Exciting changes, and this is perhaps one of the only businesses that I know of which makes you feel like a student all over again. You know, at the ripe old age of 56 that I am, I still feel like a student because there's so much happening in the digital world that brings about new learnings, right? And you need to discard some of the old learnings and you got to embrace the new. And that's the way I've approached this business throughout my career. And it's as exciting to me today as it was 33 years ago. Yeah, so a very, very warm welcome to all the participants for giving their time this evening to listen to us. I promise I won't take too long, but I know you have a very exciting evening ahead. My sincere regrets to the organizers that I wouldn't be able to stay on for the full evening, as I explained, because of prior commitments. But I'm really, really feeling privileged that you've given me an opportunity to at least share a few points of view with your audience. Now, the topic of this webinar is a very, very interesting one, culture and its reflection on advertising. Yeah, I believe it's also a very, very important one. If you ask any senior strategic planner in advertising today, any senior strategic planner, he or she would emphatically state that exploring culture would be a key task in creating a differentiated brand strategy today. And let me explain why. You know, what is this culture? Why has it become so important? And let me share a few, points from my point of view. Right, there was a time when advertising was used to simply communicate a product's benefit, right, at a very fundamental level. I mean, I remember when I first joined advertising, and even before my time, there was this ad many years before my time that said, "Surf washes clean." Surf washes clean. Literally as fundamental and as generic a benefit as that. Now, anybody would ask, detergent's job is to clean. I mean, what's the big deal about this, right? But that was a time when there weren't too many brands. It wasn't a fiercely competitive category. And therefore, a brand could well communicate its most fundamental benefit and get away with it. But what happened over the years was markets developed, competition hotted up, categories got crowded, consumers became more aware and more mature, right? And as all of these things started to happen, brands had to start finding different ways to connect with their consumers and grow. They had to find different ways to stand out from the rest. Yeah. Merely stating a product's basic benefit wasn't going to be enough anymore. The great unique selling proposition, or the USP, that was invented by Rosser Reeves many years ago, wasn't unique anymore. Yeah. So what do? How do you stand out? How do you connect with your consumers, right? So advertising planners and brand strategists started to explore many other aspects, right? They started looking at the category beyond the product, right? It's not about just presenting what the product stands for. Let's look at the category. Let's look at people and how they use the category. So they started to explore that area. In those days, it used to be called category insights. Yeah, what is the category insight the brand can explore, right? Soon, Even that became, as categories became more crowded, as competition started to come in a big way, in the soaps category, for example, the shampoos category, right? 100 brands, 200 brands. Every single category insight would have been used by somebody or the other. Then how do you become different? How do you start bringing on newer stories for your brands? Which is when the planners, and I was part of that generation that started to look at society. We said we had to go beyond category or product, and insights had to come from life. We started to look at society. We started to look at culture in our effort to try and create more connecting stories for our consumers. The how to communicate started to become as important, if not more important, than the what to communicate. And that was very, very fascinating, because suddenly, and of course, the advent of television and everything helped in creating much more emotional spaces, much more connecting, which started to connect to the heart and not just the mind, right? And advertising became more exciting, more interesting, right? So when we say culture, from an advertising lens, what is that? Now, there is obviously at a fundamental level culture with a capital C, as I call it, yeah, which is to do with heritage, rituals, arts, classical music, folk music, traditional dance forms, our traditional cuisines, religious practices. All of that is considered as culture of a place, right? You'll see that in cultural festivals, cultural events. If tomorrow the government of India sends a cultural delegation or a group of people abroad, it would be to promote these kind of cultures of India to an international audience. You may find some of that in advertising, sure. But that's not what we talk about when we talk about culture, when you see it from an advertising lens. Before I carry on, am I audible, guys? Is everything okay in terms of voice? All right, thank you.
Perfectly.
This is a question one has to often ask on a Zoom, in an online situation, and the most commonly used phrase, I believe, is that you're on mute, you're on mute. Most often used, right? So anyway, I'll continue. So there is culture with a capital C, as I called it, right? But that's not the advertising lens that we look at. When we look at it from an advertising lens, we focus on what anthropologists call the lens of the mind, right? And this is a very, very important aspect, right? Culture is what makes us as human beings do subconsciously every day. It's what makes us behave or act or react in a particular way without even thinking about it, because it's inbuilt into us, right? It's a culture that is rooted in our upbringing, in our values and habits, and we do it almost spontaneously without even thinking about it. Let me give you two hilarious examples, right? In India, for example, all of us, we may own the most expensive car, and we've paid lakhs and lakhs for that car, but we'll still crib and negotiate hard for that extra 50 rupees that the parking attendant will charge us. It just bothers us because that's inbuilt into our culture, right? We may be having very high income, all of us, but when we go to buy vegetables, we will fight hard for that extra dhania and mirchi that is given free at the end of it's not about affordability. It's just part of our culture that makes us behave certain way. Now, this may be two just simple, humorous anecdotes, but if you look at it, there are hundreds and thousands and perhaps millions of things that we do subconsciously because we have grown up in a certain way in this country. That is what we try and tap into when we explore advertising from culture from an advertising lens. We try and look at what is that very human level on which we can connect and make the brand closer to the hearts of the consumer, which makes the consumer say, hey, this is my kind of brand. I love this. It connects with my heart here, right? And culture, different cultures can even make the same brand look very different. Let me give you an amazing example, right? A Dutch anthropologist, I forget his name, wrote about this. How different cultures can look at the same product differently. The lens changes. When Nobutoshi Kihara, the great man who invented the Walkman for Sony, right? When he designed the Walkman, he created it so that an individual can listen to his music, his or her music, without disturbing others around. Now, this is something which is very much part of the Japanese society. Their culture is such that they're very conscious of people around, and they're very sensitive about people around. So I can't blast my music and impact everybody or affect everybody. This was a way I could listen to my music without disturbing others. And yet, when the Western world adopted the Walkman and it became a huge success, as you all know, it was from a slightly different lens, an opposite lens. In the Western world, they loved the Walkmans because I could now listen to my music without anybody disturbing me. Same product, designed for so that we don't disturb others. Same product, loved and accepted because I don't want others to disturb me. Why? Because the West is a far more individualistic society, while Japan is a far more collective society. Right? That's how deeply ingrained culture can be in all our lives. And that's what we try. And let me give you some examples, right, of how culture has been used very impactfully and very intelligently, I would say, in advertising. At least in my career, I've seen quite a few examples, right? Let me share with you some of my favorites. So there are two ways I believe that brands can use or have used culture beautifully to connect with their consumers, right? The first one, I would say, is connecting better by using cultural nuances and cultural insights in the narrative of the advertising, or its executional narration, as I call it. Take one of my favorite brands, right? Fevicol. I started my career on Fevicol, working under Piyush Pandey, who was my boss at that time. Now, if you look at Fevicol as an adhesive brand, much loved, market leader, right? Bonding strength is a very basic idea for an adhesive, isn't it? Think about it. Bonding strength for an adhesive is not unique. It's very, very basic, very, very fundamental. Yet what makes Fevicol so powerful as a brand and so emotionally connected to us is the cultural context in which they have advertised this brand over the years, not the benefit itself. Any brand can say superior bonding strength, but Fevicol stands apart, right? Fevicol ka jod hai tootega nahi is not on its own a unique thought. But what makes it unique is that every story that they have told, whether it's the carpenter and the egg, whether it's the overcrowded Rajasthani bus, right? And so many beautiful stories that they have done makes our hearts connect with that brand at a very, very human level. We just love the brand simply because of that, right? It's very, very Indian. It's rooted in Indianness and yet makes a very universal point, actually, right? It's very, very local and yet it's a very universal benefit. That's one example, right? I remember Piyush Pandey recently was talking about, the famous Cadbury's film where the girl comes and dances in the cricket stadium, right? When they first done that script and they had presented it, there were quite a few voices that felt, having a girl dance like this in front of public and all is not part of Indian culture, right? But between the client and the agency, they all loved the script and they were brave enough and they said, let's go ahead and do it anyway. And, the rest is history. It became one of the most loved commercials of all time, right? Apparently, after the commercial ran, even in small towns, there were women saying that, "Shayad hum khud aisa nahi kar pate, par karne ki ichha to bahut hai." It appealed to their aspirations and their dreams, right? And that's culture, right? So sometimes we tend to put culture into boxes. Don't. What you feel in your heart, what you spontaneously feel like doing is part of your culture. Yeah. Take a more recent example, like Amazon, right? When it came into India, global brand coming into India, what they wanted to simply communicate was they had a huge range of products, huge choice of products. There's something for everybody. That is what their simple communication task was. But the way they did it with the Or Dikhao campaign, immediately made it Indian. Because Or Dikhao is so intrinsically Indian and rooted in the way we react in society. Or Dikhao. The benefit of the message is range, huge range. But Or Dikhao, yeah, became the cultural connect in which, I think regardless of which strata of society you came from, people loved that Amazon ad. Whether you were a rich man or a poor man, Or Dikhao people immediately connect with, right? In recent times, I've seen Tanishq as a brand, right, has been rather, has the courage to take on certain cultural issues, whether it was widow remarriage or more recently interreligion marriage, right, for to sell their wedding jewelry, right, to lead. So I'm sensing that as a brand, they want to lead the conversation rather than follow the conversation. So they want to take a bold step, right? Now, as can be seen evidently in all the reactions, they've received a lot of violent reactions, right, to their campaigns. But I don't think the forum here is about discussing whether it's right or wrong. While there were enough people violently reacting to those ads, there are enough people who also admired them for it. I personally admired them for it, right? The issue here is not whether that's right or that's wrong, or whether that is fringe culture or not mainstream culture. I don't think that's the debate. The point is, if you use culture insightfully, right, and if you use culture well, you can create huge impact with consumers if you use it well in your executional storytelling as a brand, and people start to understand and feel very strongly about it. So that's the one broad way that brands have used culture, right? The second way is when cultural understanding is embedded in the very idea or the insight of the brand itself, not just the execution. And let me share a few examples of that. When Cadbury's did Kuch Meetha Ho Jaye, and I'm sure all of us have seen this on television, right? Kuch Meetha Ho Jaye. It wasn't just an advertising idea. It was a brand's committed growth strategy so that they can expand the consumption of chocolates by getting a larger share of the vast and culturally rooted mithai category, which was unorganized. So it was a growth strategy, business strategy. It was not just an advertising. They did beautiful advertising. There's no doubt about it. And it connected with their hearts, right? But they created space for, they used culture to create space for growth of their category itself. They increased penetration and consumption moments there. So this is not only about the execution in an ad. This is about the fundamental strategy being rooted in cultural insight. Or take, for example, when Coca-Cola, similarly, did Thanda Matlab Coca-Cola, right? It was a brilliant strategy to tap into a very cultural Indian insight as a business. I doubt if anywhere else in the world, it is referred to as a cold drink. I know in America, they call it a soda, and somewhere else they might call it a soft drink, right? But in India, we call it a cold drink. Why? Because in a hot tropical country like ours, having something thanda is a desire, isn't it? And Coke beautifully appropriated that. Thanda matlab Coca-Cola. And in doing so, I believe it went a long way in a cultural outsider like Coke became a cultural insider thanks to that campaign and that strategy, right? So that was a beautiful insight used by a brand to actually become an insider. Yeah. Another powerful idea that comes to my mind is the Times of India Lead India campaign that came some years ago. I don't know how many of you all would have seen it, but it was a very, very powerful campaign where Times of India pledged to find India's next great leader. Right? Now, what was the cultural context of that? The cultural context in those days was politicians in general did not necessarily enjoy a very respectful image amongst the population. Politicians were not seen as professionals or educated or capable. Politicians were seen as dirty, corrupt, and so on and so forth. There are parodies in Hindi films and so on and so forth, right? Never really had. And Times of India took it on head on as a brand thought. Why can't India's future leaders be educated and capable and professional? Why don't we start looking for a future leadership? Now, again, I'm not here to comment on whether that was successful and what happened to the person they had chosen and where he is, etc. But I think they did plant a thought in the public consciousness. And that's how culture begins. I mean, today, when you look at the AAP party with Kejriwal, etc., you wonder, was that subconsciousness something that led to the creation of AAP? I don't know. I'm not wanting to credit Times Group for that, but it's culturally very intrinsic to the way we start looking at politicians and our leaders and how that can change as generations change, right? There are many such examples like this. I mean, not just in India, but across the world. I'm sure advertising, passionate people about advertising have seen Dove's campaign for real beauty that was run across the board. That was again rooted in a global culture because body shaming was at its peak. When this brand came and said, everybody can be beautiful the way you are. You don't need to be thin or fat or dark or fair. You can be beautiful as you are. Campaign for real beauty. They rode on a cultural trend. Or similarly, Nike, which for years had been promoting itself brilliantly as performance sports shoes, right? Today, they have moved into a far more leadership area of everyday athleticism. Everybody is an athlete. Whether it is you going for your daily walk or somebody else running a race or somebody else just doing exercise in a gym. Everybody is an athlete. They have broadened their sphere. Again, that's a cultural because health consciousness, fitness consciousness is a cultural phenomenon that is growing across. Today, if you look at it, right, look at our Hindi film heroes today. Look how fit they are physically compared to many heroes we have seen in the past with pot bellies and slightly paunches, or even our cricketers today. They're absolutely fit. But at one time, we used to have slightly fat cricketers and they were still loved, right? Things have changed. Fitness is now mainstream. Health consciousness is mainstream. And Nike has moved along with that. Everyday athleticism. Now, if I were to conclude, and I don't intend to take too much more of your time, in conclusion, culture is a very, very, very strong weapon that can be used in advertising, right? If you use it wisely and well. You do need to do a lot of groundwork to uncover those cultural insights, right? And it can help create a much needed differentiation for your brand. It can create much needed spaces of growth for your brand. And most importantly, connect with the hearts of the consumers and bring your brand much closer to the consumers. Now, this is a topic that honestly we can discuss for hours and hours because if you get 5 planners in a room, this is what's going to happen. But I hope in the last 10, 15 minutes, I've been able to at least give you all a small glimpse. This is my personal opinion and one that I share with a few of my friends, but I hope it's been of value. I genuinely thank you all for your patience and for hearing me out. A warm thank you to the organizers for including me in this event. Thank you so much.
Mr. Kamath, it's an exceptionally refreshing take with so many examples. The examples make the story very, very strong that you wanted to. I was writing on the side, summarizing your key messages. I've also written down a full note, maybe towards the end, as the chairs of the session, I'll be repeating that for remembering. As you all know, perhaps it has been communicated by the moderator, we shall be coming out with a book of the summarized talks of all of the speakers. So I request you, I know you are a very busy person, but still 1,000-word summary of what you have just now said would go a long way. There are almost 300 speakers whose writings will go in the book. It will be, and with 75 of them foreigners, 75 of them policymakers, 75 of them academicians. So it will be great to get your contribution. And just before the next speaker is invited, let me remind you, I'm one of the 6 finalists, not winners, 6 finalists of Lead India campaign. I won from Pune. And finally, it was the Bangalore guy, R.K. Mishra, who had won. I do not know who is doing what just now, but good example of you connected uprising of uprising to the search or quest of professional leaders. Thank you very much. Back to the moderator.
Thank you very much, sir, for your valuable insights on brand and culture and connecting both the words and terminology together. Moving further, now I take this opportunity to bring somebody who is our awardee for tonight, Dr. Mangesh Karandikar. He is an eminent media educator. I request the session chair of this session, Professor Ujol Kumar Chaudhary, to kindly do the honor.
I will quickly introduce Dr. Mangesh Karandikar. First thing foremost, he is a true friend, a friend whom you can trust, whom you can bond with, and with no other considerations in between, because I believe true friendship is rare to find. Great scholars are common these days. I mean, may not be very common, but still you can find, but true friends you don't. Dr. Mangesh Karandikar is the director of MET Institute of Mass Media in Mumbai. After being in business of designing and printing, web development and corporate films for 15 years, and that's very interesting. After 15 years in the corporate world, he found his calling in teaching and joined the University of Mumbai. I appreciate this because most of our academicians of media have never seen the insides of a newsroom or an advertising agency or for that matter, a studio. So he found his calling after 15 years in the industry in teaching and joined the University of Mumbai, one of the most respected and one of the earliest universities of the country, and headed the Department of Communication and Journalism for quite some time. His doctorate is in communication and journalism, and he studied websites of political parties in India for his doctoral degree. And that would be very interesting to update it in today's times, I'm sure. You can write a postdoctoral now on updating the current situations of the political parties and their ideologies as far as their websites are concerned. He is now also an entrepreneur, having started his own firm, Ultracast LLP, which is an online media education platform, conducts filmmaking, digital marketing, graphic designing workshops for children, teachers, and business people there. He's a blogger, has a YouTube channel, and quite a popular blogger. Don't think that people with gray hair do not have following, by the way. So please actually follow his blog and YouTube and it'll get to know. Conducts free sessions for students as well online. This year, he trained more than 1,200 students in sound editing. Dr. Mangesh Karandikar, and since I've heard it, so I can say with confidence, is a fabulous flutist. He plays the flute, harmonica player, educationist, blogger, filmmaker, and trekker. He dabbles in painting and clay modeling. We are really proud to have Dr. Mangesh Karandikar and my good friend as the eminent scholar, eminent contributor to media and communication education. The video, please. Thank you, Dr. Mangesh, for your presence here today and for the great contribution to the cause of media and communication education inside the classroom, beyond the classroom, offline and online, through your work and through your teaching and mentoring that you have been doing for so many decades now. Thank you very much. The laminated certificate and with all the president's, vice president and everyone's signature and certain books that would like to share with you would be sent to you by courier. Over to you, Dr. Mangesh, for your acceptance speech.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for this. It was a surprise to me when you suddenly called up, you just gave me a message saying that we would like to do this. And I was very pleasantly surprised. And thank you very much, Professor Ujol Chaudhary, Professor Partha Samanta, GMEC team for bestowing me with this honor. It feels nice to receive an award, which is not applied for or aspired for also. That makes it double pleasant for me. Well, I'm looking at things from the perspective of a witness and a participant to this digital media evolution. I have been, in an article I've written some time back, I've said that I am not a digital immigrant. I'm rather a digital mutant, because the digital evolution that took place has taken place so fast that you have to adapt, and there is no time to evolve, which is a very long-run process. So I call myself as a digital mutant, and shayad meri umar ke sab naujawan hai, they'll feel the same way, because we have had to adapt and enter this field of digital media. So that is where I stand, and that is where I look at things from that perspective. Even Guy Debord, says that the societies where modern conditions prevail, all life is an accumulation of spectacles, and that what all that directly lived has moved on to representation. And Jean Baudrillard says that today the scene and the mirror no longer exist. Instead, there is a non-reflecting surface where operations unfold and smooth operational surface of communication takes place. Guy Debord also talks about the fraud of satisfaction, where we are made to aspire for the next generation of mobile phone, next generation of laptop, next generation of computers, and everything that you have, I'm supposed to be dissatisfied with it. Well, that is the world today anyway. I'm going to talk in two areas. One is about the current topic, that is culture and advertising. And I'm going to also look at education, because that is what I am, an educator by heart. There have been discussions and articles on de-westernizing communication and de-westernizing media education. Now, this is a topic that has been discussed in so many conferences and so many seminars. It is a very important topic and has to be taken up and discussed, because it is not that the Western models and Western theories are not good enough. They are definitely good, and they are the ones which actually started us off in communication studies. But I think we also have to look at the experiments that have been done, the concept of Natya Shastra and Sadharanikaran, which so many people have been talking about. It is very important to teach these theories and concepts and the models along with the Western theories and models, and not look at one thing as the other. It has to be a comprehensive something that is together. Why I'm looking at this in this particular forum? So Eastern audiences look at media in a different way, and Western audiences look at media and consume media in a different way. Similarly, as Mr. Kamath was very rightly saying, that has what has been the change that has been happening in Indian advertising also. We have been looking at advertising, and you can very clearly, distinctively see that the Indian advertising and the Western advertising, the way we tell the stories are definitely different than the way the Western media tells the stories. I make my Hindi films the way I do because that's my culture. That is my film culture. So I make the films the way I do. Look at color. We have been trained to say that the color of love is red. I don't have an opinion about it, but is it red? Maybe in our cultural context, in Indian cultural context, it is yellow because that is the color of Kamadeva. Look at the way the rebranding has been done by banks, like Bank of Baroda has changed its color to orange. Look at the way a Standard Chartered bank is having a blue and green combination because simply speaking, because simply speaking, the Western color wheel says that blue and green are more dependable colors, and people depend and look at the bank's colors and say that this is a dependable bank. Citibank is blue in color, whereas HSBC is red. So probably the Eastern culture has got a different connotations to look at colors, unlike the Western culture. I mean, and again, I repeat that there's nothing wrong or right. There's nothing. Yes, Dr. Kamath, it was glad to hear you. And I was also happy to host you in our institute. And I'll welcome you once again. Thank you very much. Right. So I'm not saying anything is right. I am no person to say that this is right or wrong, or this is better or not better. And when I'm talking about these colors, there are no religious connotations here. They are purely cultural connotations which have been ingrained into us for years together. And that is how we should look at these things, because my method of communication, the way I communicate with my audiences, is different. Look at Natya Shastra, for example. When we look at Natya Shastra, I know there are so many scholars much better than me who have been looking at Natya Shastra from the communication perspective. But we all know that when we are talking of Natya Shastra, I'm talking of communicating an emotion, communicating something from my end, from a theater, to my audiences. And when I look at the mannerisms and the gestures and the text that goes into the advertising in Indian context, it is definitely different than looking at the perspective of the Indian audiences rather than the Western audiences. And that has been changing all along. I mean, I look at advertisements from an Indian perspective, and I look at advertisement because I feel that my advertisements are talking to me rather than somebody else. That has been a very profound change in this. There are other things also. Are we reflecting? We say normally that films are a reflection of the society and society is a reflection of films, that cliche thing. Why don't we extend it to advertisement also? Are advertisements a reflection of a society, and is the society a reflection of advertising? If you look at that, so for example, in my college days, we did not have anything called a Valentine's Day. It is a pseudo event. Yeah, we knew about Valentine's Day. Those who read those who read knew about Valentine's Day, but it was not celebrated during my college days. And neither was Friendship Day. I mean, if I don't tie a band on your hand, am I not your friend? So these are things that have been pushed on by advertising and by commercial connotations. And again, I repeat, there's nothing right or wrong about it. It's the fact. And then when we look at that, is that are we also looking at cultural change here? Are we looking at a culture where we are looking at where the advertising is pushing some concepts onto the society, or is it really the other way around? Is the change in the society, is the change in the cultural behavior of the people pushing advertisements to take on different forms and meanings? That is where we have to look at advertising from the cultural and the education perspective. When we are looking at these things, we are looking at the world of simulacra and simulation. We are looking at representation. We are looking at changes in perspective. We're looking at artificial intelligence, information overload, audio-visual overabundance, very small attention spans in our students. And in this context, we have to formulate our communication strategy, our pedagogy, and adopt to this technology to adapt to the changing times. And either we do this and survive, or we perish. That is the way we are looking at things. I'm going to be little blunt in some aspects here. I hope you don't mind, but it's time to speak out about some things. So, for example, I'm looking at a phase where am I training students or am I training consumers? We are looking at increasing tendency of parents and consumers to look at institutes as service providers rather than temples of knowledge. That is one issue that we are looking at. We have to look at that issue. There are other areas also that we need to look at. whatever branches we are looking at in media, we are looking at PR, we are looking at entertainment, advertising, journalism. Journalism is sacrosanct, and yet journalism is taking a form of advertising because even journalists today are made to write keywords in their stories, and that's a fact. So, are we looking at digital marketing and advertising as something that is to do with commercial, commercial gains, or are we now looking at everything as a commerce and everything as an advertising medium? So even journalism has taken that form today. We need to look at learner-centric. Now, let me go into education a little bit more. We need to look at learner-centric approach to teaching and balanced theory and practical knowledge in all our institutes. Our departments and institutes have to be well equipped with at least basic infrastructure which is required to put our students into the industry. I have seen many institutes, many departments, which don't even have a camera. Forget about a Mac or computer. Just a computer is not going to make any difference here. If our students have to do well in the advertising world, they need to be adept at what they do. Let me come to a very more important issue, which I've been talking about in conferences and talking about in private. Isn't it time that the UGC recognizes, or maybe the NAP now recognizes, that there is to be a faculty of media rather than clubbing the faculty, clubbing media in arts faculty or commerce faculty or science faculty? Isn't it time that we start looking at media education a little differently? We also need teachers who have worked in the industry for some period of time, to be able to give justice to the curriculums, and we need our curriculums to keep on fast evolving to suit the changes that have been happening in the industry. Actually, there's another thing that is very important, that all the media professionals who wish to come into teaching need to be recognized by the UGC also, considering their years of experience in the industry and giving them a position they will enter with some self-respect and dignity. I mean, a NetSet certificate and a PhD degree is fine as a system, but does that necessarily make a good teacher? That is a question we have to ask. I see so many postgraduate students finishing their postgraduation and entering the field of teaching without even a single day of experience. I urge all the students who are watching this today to at least get into the industry for a few years and then go into teaching, because only then you'll be able to really become a good teacher and do justice to what you are supposed to do. You're creating media professionals and you're creating citizens of tomorrow, and you need to be able to do what you preach. That is very, very, very important. Well, I'm not going to take much time. I hope I made some sense in this. And thank you, Professor Ujol Chaudhary, Partha Samanta, and the entire team for giving me this honor. I hope I'm not crossed lines here, Mr. Chaudhary. And I also wish to thank a few thanks are very important. I want to thank our trustees, who have encouraged me to explore myself in all this, Mr. Pankaj Bhujbal and Vishakha Bhujbal, and also Mr. Ashok Saraf, who put me from university and put me into a different league altogether. And there's one more person, Sanjay Ranade, Dr. Sanjay Ranade, who pushed me and helped me to find my calling in life. This is an honor which needs these thank yous. And my family, my wife Manjusha, son Tejas, and father, who have been my support system. So that is very, very important, because otherwise I wouldn't be here, and my students, without whom I'm nothing.
So sweet of you. People,
Thank you.
when they're at a certain position, they forget those who have actually supported the journey. So from your mentors to your wife and children, when you name them, it's so sweet of you. And I learned a new topic today, new theme today, or rather new terminology today: digital mutant, somewhere in between digital native and digital migrant. Over to you, Partho, for the next speaker, please.
Thank you so much, sir, for your kind words. Moving further, we have one of the Asia's Pacific's most recognized digital transformation leader, Mr. Damien Cumming. He is currently the Chief Digital Strategy and Leadership Practice at National University of Singapore, NUS ISS. I request our keynote speaker to kindly address the gathering.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Damien Cummings. Let me just do a quick screen share because I've got a few slides to share. Just give me a moment. Well, it's an honor being here tonight, and thank you very much for allowing me about 10 minutes or so to take you through some of my experience around digital transformation. So just a little bit about me. I am actually one of those people who have actually come out of industry and actually gone into teaching. So I joined the National University of Singapore earlier this year. I'm the chief of the Digital Strategy and Leadership practice. What I generally do is actually teach postgraduate students all about how to become a digital transformation leader of the future. But I have come out of industry. So before I was in US, I was the CEO of a tech startup called PeopleWave. Before that, I was actually a practitioner and a marketer. I was the global head of digital marketing at Standard Chartered Bank. I was the chief marketing officer for the Asia Pacific region at Philips. I was the regional marketing director at Samsung. And I also held senior roles in across sales, marketing, and digital at Dell, Coca-Cola, and started out many, many years ago at McKinsey & Company. So I've very much come from the practitioner perspective across media, communications, sales, and marketing. Now I'm bringing that to life in actually the work I'm doing at the university. So what I wanted to do is actually really spend 10 minutes or so bringing those two worlds together, both the marketing world and, of course, what I'm seeing in digital transformation. Now, you might not know this, but 84% of digital transformation programs fail. So only 16% succeed. Now, this doesn't matter whether you're doing a marketing or a communications program, or whether you're implementing kind of deep technology into the organizations you work for. It doesn't matter whether you're a startup or you're an academic institution or a global multinational company. All of these projects fail. Now, of course, what we've seen over the past year or so with the COVID pandemic, about 10 years of digital transformation has been crammed into this 1 year as we've been forced to work from home, as we've been forced to have conferences like this, which have been done via Zoom, as we've actually had to adapt to the new normal. So while this feels like a digital transformation, maybe that's someone else's job, I'm here to tell you today that you have a part to play. That part is whether you're a marketer or a comms professional, whether you're a student about to enter the workforce, or whether you're an academic actually teaching this for the next generation. We all have a role to play to make sure that digital transformation projects actually work. So what is digital transformation? Well, I'm not going to give you a definition. I'm sure I can come up with your own. For me, it could be the media mix model changes, going from traditional to digital media, and most of the marketing professionals have gone through that. It could be going from paper to digital, or digitization journey that most people have gone through. Or it could be simply that you're looking at things like omni-channel, going from traditional retail or storefronts into a new way of using mobile apps or e-commerce to actually sell to consumers. Doesn't matter what it is. What's important is it's made up of these different elements. So first of all, any leader driving a digital transformation has to develop a strategy. That feels really obvious, but I'll explain why that was needed in the next slide. Of course, what we often see is that there's actually engagement, which is usually a challenge or an area where most marketers and comms professionals need to play a role. You need to get your organization across that journey. Of course, it needs to be technology driven with innovative technology, and of course, actually putting in place the digital transformation. But our signposts are very much around data and analytics. We don't know where we're going unless we have data. And underpinning that is very much what a lot of the faculty and esteemed colleagues here do. Really look at a culture, leadership, and upskilling, making sure we've all got the right foundation, whether it be actually moving into an agile way of working, using concepts like lean, making sure you're across both digital, traditional media, or of course, just generally have the right level of digital literacy to make this journey real. Now, the challenge is because so many digital transformations fail, there are many breakpoints you need to be aware of. So for example, the first breakpoint is if you don't have strategy. This might feel obvious, but the challenge is if you don't have strategy, you've got high engagement in your organization, good innovative technology, and you're using data to signpost where you're going, but you've effectively digitized. Is that a bad problem? Not necessarily. You could actually move from paper to spreadsheets to cloud software, but it doesn't mean you're actually truly transforming. It just means there's usually a lot of busy work going on, get people to cloud or on-prem servers, or effectively trying to get all those pieces of paper and all those physical processes into some sort of digital format. And it's usually a great starting point for anyone trying to get going in digital transformation. But digital transformation usually implies a 10x multiplier. We're going to make 10 times bigger revenue. We're going to survive the changes of the pandemic. We're going to engage our customers better and delight and surprise them. So that doesn't happen with our strategy. Next, what we see is a lack of engagement, the key problem in about 70% of the digital transformation failures. Engagement is where your organization just gives you a great deal of resistance to any project, not necessarily digital transformation, but any change project coming through. In most larger organizations, what you have is a highly engaged C-suite. The leaders are really, really happy to get going. You've got a younger generation or new hires that are coming in and are 100% supportive and have high energy. But the problem is you have what's called the frozen middle. The frozen middle are your middle managers, your people who have been in that role for a while, the people that have the power to say no. And every single person in your organization has that power to say no. And often they'll say no without even saying a word. They just refuse to engage. They'll actually just not support you. And in some cases, they might even sabotage the work that you're doing. We often see this as in the form of politics inside an organization. We could see it in challenges as marketers between the client and the advertising agency. It could just be generally someone doesn't want to support the initiative and just wants to kill it. The other areas where things can go wrong is where you lack innovation. So again, everything kind of should be innovative. If you're not innovative, you're really not moving forward. Again, technology. If you don't have technology and digital transformation, you can't really have a digital transformation, can you? So there's a high degree of frustration if that's the case. And finally, if you don't have the data, you're going to stagnate. You know, with the best strategy, a highly engaged workforce and good technology, you still don't actually know where you're going. And again, the challenge is all media, marketing, and communications professionals have to be data and digital experts by default. They need to speak the language of data to understand consumer mindsets, to understand how to drive their project internally. And again, data is the new currency to do anything inside large organizations nowadays. And again, I just want to talk about, is there a role for communications or marketing professionals to play? Well, actually, there very much is. So when you look at actually who drives digital transformations, it's often the CMO. That might be surprising, but if you think about it, most of us going through a digital transformation usually look to the CMO for a couple of reasons. I think back to my days at Samsung, we had $1 billion of marketing budget, $1 billion for the region. Now, that excluded India at that point, but it was really Southeast Asia. Yeah, it's markets excluding China, Korea, and India, but it was the other parts of Asia. With that $1 billion budget, we could, marketers usually plan month by month, quarter by quarter, or year by year. That means that if we wanted to try something new, let's put in a new piece of technology, let's engage customers in a different way, let's do some market research to get things going. The CMO is the budget holder to make those things happen. You can move fast, test, and learn. Now, of course, the CEO should lead, but the reality is they don't. Now, that's tied up in a lot of things. Ego, lack of skill sets, they're real challenges. So a lot of CEOs cannot admit weakness, cannot admit that they don't have the right skills, and certainly don't want to admit that they can't lead a digital strategy. So what they do is actually kind of defer to their CMO or CAO, or what most often happens is they hire a very expensive resource, like the jobs I've had in the past, called a chief digital officer or a head of digital. You'll see low competence CMOs often have a highly competent CDO. Now, of course, that's not a sustainable solution because that CDO has a very short time frame. They get very frustrated, they can't move up. And the CMO may be a fantastic, what I call the Teflon raincoat. They can do a bit of Tai Chi and move the politics around. Nothing sticks to them, but actually they kind of stay in those roles forever and usually drag down the organization they're in. So CMOs have a fantastic role to play. They're not super consultants like CDOs. They've got a limited lifespan. They're not IT people that need to put their budget into Microsoft Office or Excel or all these other kind of must-have technologies that can't be shifted easily. And of course, they're working directly with CEOs already, and it's a real challenge. So often, I hear a lot of communications and marketing professionals moaning that they're not driving enough digital transformation, but that's what they've got to do. Put your hand up, lead from the front. And my last slide is really just understanding some of the roles that a marketing or a media or communications professional can play around that. The first piece of advice I would give a marketing professional is do not leave it to the IT or digital team. Sit down with the CEO, take charge. Marketers are great storytellers, but let's move out of the world of fluff and smoke and mirrors and sit down and actually start to talk about business results. How am I going to save money? How am I going to make money? How am I going to age people better? How am I going to make my business survive the COVID pandemic? Of course, the best thing that most communications marketing professionals can do is help the teams around them engage. They must figure out who are the people in their organization they're going to lose and make them the winner. And again, that's a whole separate topic for another time. But again, that's the most important skill any marketer needs to drive any level of change. Of course, data needs to be understood. Let's stop talking about vanity metrics. Let's stop talking about reach and frequency and brand engagement. None of that stuff matters to a CEO or a board. They don't get it, they don't understand it, and frankly, they shouldn't. They shouldn't care. What they should care about is, am I growing this business? Are our customers happy? Or where can I save money? This needs to be a common language that a marketer or comms professional is driving with the C-suite, and of course, have that terminology understood by everyone so we're all on the same page. And again, too often as a marketer, what we do is tend to hide behind our own terminology, our own glossary of terms. We should stop doing that. We should be very clear about, in simple terms, what we're driving as marketers and communications professionals. And again, what I tend to find is the higher you go up in the marketing and comms world, the more it's about soft skills, and it's more about taking everyone on the journey with you. You can't leave anyone behind. And again, in the world of digital transformation, it's making sure that everyone has at least some level of training around what digital is, what's omni-channel in the e-commerce experience, and how do you engage a retail side of things? What kind of data points are you using, and how do you do analytics in a way that makes sense? How do you use digital marketing versus traditional marketing, or is there a difference anymore? How do you think about social media and engaging audiences around that? Developing competency and having a fantastic team of giants around you is one of the core things great marketers need to do to drive and succeed in any digital transformation. But with that, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you tonight, and it's been an honor to be here. Thank you.
It's simply wow. It's just simply wow. I won't hazard a summarization of this talk. The slides, though they were only 5, had a full thesis into it. The thesis of understanding and practicing digital transformation. The building blocks, missing out even one block, what does it lead to? And if you do not have to, and if you do not intend to lose out on any block, what do you need to do? And how marketing and digital transformation go hand in hand. Fabulous. Thank you, Damien. This has been really fabulous. This whole session today from Kama till now, including Dr. Mangesh, this is becoming so powerful, and I would like, we surely, our all members should share with their students. But unfortunately, these days, there's so much of webinar fatigue and YouTube watching fatigue that people sessions on messaging, culture, advertising, and digital transformation that I'm participating in. Thank you very much, Damien. We shall collaborate on many other things in future as we go ahead. Back to Professor Partha Samanto.
Thank you so much, sir, for your kind words and throwing lights on critical role of marketing in digital transformation. Now we will move into the second part of the conclave, research paper presentation. We have with us Professor Kanchan. Professor Kanchan is a seasoned faculty with a teaching and counseling experience of 20 years at various academic levels, right from schooling to MBA. Professor Rutra career path has been with Doon School and Counseling at the Youth Center. As a senior manager and psychological coach at United World School of Business, she facilitated self-development, provided self-awareness, clarified thinking processes, and helped to develop career path with the help of psychometric test. As a senior faculty, Professor Kanchan has been the teaching and mentor of BFTNMP students. She has been also guiding students across programs like MAFTNMP, MSCJ, short-term professional courses, PGDM, BMM. She teaches subjects like research methodology, advertising in contemporary society, media laws, and media economics are few of her favorite subjects. She has been the program in charge of BAFT NMP for last 5 years. As a faculty, her research discourse illustrates a good number of research paper and a book titled Advertising in Contemporary Society for the final year BMM students of University of Mumbai. May I now request Professor Kanchan Luthra to present a paper.
Thank you, Professor Partha. Can I request you to please share the PPT?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, the topic that I have chosen for today's paper is also related to culture, but in a very different way. We've been listening to all the stalwarts in the evening, speaking and telling us about different facets of how culture has had an impact on advertising and media in general. I would like to take you back to the past and look at how media has also been instrumental in telling us about how history is and what history is in a way that also becomes interesting and can be a very good storyteller. So the title of my paper is Lost History and Media. Can we have the next slide, please? Now, history, like media, also delves in storytelling, and probably it can be, I call it the richest subject because it has so many stories to tell, and stories that probably are never ending. We could go on making films telling stories about them, and still we would have so much more to talk about. That is why I always say that history is probably the richest subject which is there. But only thing which I have found while I was growing up as a student was that we were taught history in a manner that was just documented facts. History was never made interesting to us. It was never told to us in a storytelling format, which I think probably should be there because these are some of the best stories that we can listen to. There's so much learning, there's so much uh, message that is there in history, and strategies that we can plan, strategies that we can look for even in advertising today. So that is the reason I have chosen this subject as a subject for today's paper. And what I wanted to see was that can we make history interesting and history storytelling in a way with the help of documentary filmmaking, so that both the academicians and scholars could learn from it, could look at different perspectives of history, and then maybe make it even more richer. We've seen that there are so many mysteries that are embroidered in our historical facts. These mysteries, some of them which have been solved, some they still remain unsolved, and some so unreal that if we look at all these facets, we might be thinking, did it really happen? I just want to give one example, which I really was surprised when I heard it for the first time. I was reading through Maya culture and Maya civilization. There is a game at that time which they used to play. It was like very much the football that we have today. Only thing is, instead of the football, they used to have a human skull with which they used to play this game of football, and the winner was killed because they thought that by killing the winner and the captain of the winning team, he would attain moksha, as we call it in Hindu mythology. So he would be relieved from the uh, recycling of birth and death. So this is something which I was really amazed at, how this game was played. And if we look at it in today's times, I'm sure none of us would believe if that game was played today. So media, in a way, I have seen that it has always contributed to deciphering history. And in a way, what it has done is it has rewritten history all over again. Whether we talk about our own dynasty, which there is so much of gap in our own history, or we look at global history, the rewriting of history. If we look at the Indian history, I just want to give one example. I was watching a documentary on Indian history where they were talking about the Chalukya dynasty. and the way they used to make temples. And the method that they were explaining in that documentary, how these temples were carved and how the marbles were carried from one place to another, it is, I think, more advanced than the technology that we use today. So that is the reason which always fascinated me, and that is the reason that thought of writing this paper on documentary filmmaking. Can we have the next slide, please? Alice Brumby, she teaches at York St. John's University, and she's written in her article in History Today a very interesting analysis on World War One. And this article, it reveals the pain and anguish of the soldiers, and the pain and the soldiers which they have gone through, and especially when the World War One ended, we saw that a lot of people, they were celebrating that finally the war had come to an end. But the soldiers, for the soldiers, they were in a dilemma whether to celebrate or to feel sad. Captain Herman Marston, he wrote in his memoirs in 1976 a reason that why he could not write about his experiences way back when the First World War ended. And one of the major reasons that he's quoted in his memoirs is that he wanted to speak about the pain that he had gone through, and also his fellow mates. But what he was not able to do it was that if he wrote about it and people read all those memoirs, the pain would again become alive, not only for the soldiers but also for the families. And that is the reason he wrote so many years after the World War One ended. He wrote his memoirs in 1976. Can we have the next slide, please? So the objective of my paper was to find out how documentary films are instrumental in education. And I was trying to look at it from two perspectives. One, in the delivery of syllabus that we have for various subjects, and in designing new. So these are the two perspectives that I have looked at, as using documentary filmmaking as a tool and as an educational aid in today's times. Can we have the next slide? The methodology that I have used is a clear method, and I wanted to find out whether documentary filmmaking can actually, in today's times, because we are using online education so much because of the COVID, uh, documentary filmmaking can become a very important educational tool in providing education. So, as I mentioned earlier, I studied this case study using two different aspects of the courses, and second, syllabus delivery. Can we have the next slide? Now, in 2008, sorry, there was a documentary film which was made, Breaking the Maya Code. This documentary traced the journey of archaeologists, linguists, mathematicians, and historians, how they understood and how they cracked the language which was spoken in Maya civilization. And this documentary has been instrumental in designing new courses for Florida University, Mississippi University, where they have started a course on Maya civilization. And one of the important aspects of this documentary was that Florida University, they started an experiment using this specific documentary, where they took the language, that is the Mayan language, back to the Mayans. Sorry, Mayans, they have been uh, residing and habitating in the area of Mexico, especially the Guatemala region. Now, what had happened after the Spanish invasion, they were forced to re- stop using their own language. And as a result of that, over the period of years and after generations, they had forgotten what Mayan language was, and especially even the names that they were keeping of the children and everybody else around them, they were all Christian names. So they had actually forgotten what Mayan language was. And this experiment that was conducted by Florida University, they took the Mayan language back to the people, they taught the language to them, and in a way, they provided an identity to the Mayans after almost a century. So it is as if people really got to know who they were after a century break, which sorry, which had come in between. Another documentary that I want to mention, especially over here, is a documentary which is Doomsday, World War One, and another documentary, They Shall Not Grow Old. These two documentaries, they give an insight into the documentation of events. These documentations are not just historical facts, but these documentations are also talking about more of the emotional side of the soldiers, the pain that they have gone through, what they had to, the situations that they had to live in. So the emotional side of the war, which generally we don't read in history, we generally get to know the political scenario, we get to know the social scenario, the economic scenario. One aspect which is always missing is the emotional connect that we have in history. So these two documentaries, they offer, most importantly, the emotional connect that we get to have with these soldiers, what they have gone through, and then probably we can take an empathetic stance as to what would have happened during that time and what they would have gone through. So in a way, these documentaries, they help the students in critical thinking and analyzing historical events. So that is the reason I chose these two documentaries, especially in teaching of history and specifically World War One. Can we have the next slide, please? Now, basically, what I have tried to analyze and come to the conclusion through this case study is that in-depth study using documentary filmmaking, they can reveal a number of facts. And these facts, especially the emotional facts, they can enrich the subject. A subject like history, a subject like archaeology. So all these subjects, they can be enriched by using these documentary films that have been made. There are interesting and fascinating facts which academicians and scholars both can use to impart education and to imbibe education. These documentary films have shown that advanced technology, it is possible to decipher unknown facts, and it can bring them to public light for all of us to gain from. Can we have the next slide? So this brings me to the end of my paper. If there are any questions, I'll happily take them.
I think there is no question in the inbox. Okay. Thank you so much, Professor Kanjan Luthra.
Yeah.
Just one comment, ma'am. Thank you
Yes,
very much. It was a wonderful paper, and I think you're dealing with something which we have been discussing, and something close to my heart. Thank you very much for this paper. Very
thank
much.
you, sir. Thanks much.
Today, we are going to witness the unveiling of the book, Is Love Enough?, authored by none other than Ms. Sukanya De. Born into a well-educated family, brought up in a diverse culture, Sukanya had been exposed to various cultures since childhood, which helped her to understand people around her and perceive the world differently. She is multilingual and has a command over 6 languages. Sukanya is currently working at the leading advertising agency in Ahmedabad and also works as a freelance writer and translator. Sukanya is passionate about reading, writing, and traveling, and strongly believes that these allows her to imagine, explore, and express her through various mediums. She also has a keen interest in academics and research and has multiple papers published in national and international journals. Is love enough? Her debut novel is just stepping stone toward becoming a renowned author. Now I request Sukanya De to kindly share some insight of her first novel, Is Love Enough, and show the book to the entire audience. Over to you, Sukanya.
Thank you so much, Partha. I'll first like to unveil this little thing that I have been working on for past 7 years, and it's like a dream come true moment for me. Yeah, here it is. Is Love Enough? The first book that actually went to publishing that I had started writing multiple books, but this is the first one that got completed, that reached a publisher, and that got printed. So here it is. This moment is like just so beautiful, and it's like a dream come true. I'm kind of speechless and emotional right now. All I can recall at this moment is it was a moment when I was silent, not because I had nothing to say, but because I had a lot and I didn't know where to start from. This is a line that I had written back when I was 15 and I was in school, and it was a part of a poem. And today I feel like living the exact line at this moment. Dreams do come true, and today I believe that they do. I have been cherishing this dream, and I have been wanting to live it for many years, maybe since the age of 5, when I actually started reading books, and I always wanted to, have my name written right over here on the cover page of a book, and, feel that thing. Before I say something about my book, Is Love Enough, I would like to start by taking a brief moment thanking a few people who have been a part of this journey and who have made it possible for me to reach over here. It's an honor to be a part of this book launch ceremony, and to have all my faculties and the who's who of the media industry to be a part of this and attend this. It couldn't have been better. I would like to thank Almighty for giving me words and the energy to actually finish this book and get it to the publishers. As mentioned in the book, I would like to, out of a lot of many people to whom I would like to dedicate this book, the one and the foremost person is my grandfather, Abuja, as I addressed him. He introduced me to the world of story and storytelling at the age of maybe 1, when bedtime stories were not just a story to make me fall asleep, but they were something that he would always tell me, Goshti rangaun sangaycha astat. That is, there is a way, there is a method to tell your stories. And he would train me, and he would tell me the intricacies of how a story became beautiful. And then I would, at the age of 2, when I started speaking, I would just make up my own stories and start telling people. This has remained with me throughout, and this has helped me write this story. I'd like to thank my friends and family who have been there, supported me, encouraged me throughout, and pushed me to complete this. There's also one person I had always, like, as I told you, I had taken 7 years to reach over here. I had started writing this back in 2014. And then there was a period when I had thought this is going to be my vision 2020. And I'm going to get this book out and published in the year 2020. And till 30th of December 2019, I had never found a publisher. But on the New Year's Eve, just a day before 2020 started, I was on a walk with a friend of mine, and we just ended up, we thought, let's gift each other books. And we were strolling around, and we went to a street vendor in Andheri, and we just picked up some books. And while chatting with the street vendor, that was Santoshji, he owns a store at Andheri, and he himself is an author. That's what I understood while I was having a word with him. And he introduced me, and he took interest in my book, and he introduced me to the open book publishing, where I met Chetan and Brian, who have been an integral part of this project, and who very generously accepted to edit, publish, and distribute my book. And I'm glad they have done an amazing work on the cover and content of this book. How can I forget to thank DGMC, my alma mater, where I spent 2 years of my life, and all the faculties over there who have been supporting me throughout since then till today. Special thanks to Professor Partha Pratim Sir and Global Communication Education Conclave for bestowing me with the opportunity, and to everyone present over here. And definitely my future readers, thank you for investing your time in picking up my book and reading it. Is Love Enough is actually an outcome of lots of hard work, multiple sleepless nights, mugs and mugs of coffee, result of pen, pencil, mouse clicks, and tons and heaps of discarded papers. I'll say this book has seen more lockdowns than any one of us have. In the initial phase, it saw a lockdown when the idea was just stuck right in my mind, and it wasn't ready to come out. Later on, it saw a lockdown when it was just on my computer as a Word file, and it would be there for months. It would be just there on page number 28. And when I would face a writer's block, and there was nothing that I could go beyond it. Later on the stage, it saw a lockdown when I had completed it, and it was in my draft box, and I was pretty anxious to, go ahead and approach any publisher. That's when my mom gave me the confidence. It better lays in a publisher's inbox than in your draft box. And that's when I actually started approaching the publishers. I'm sure the little kid that I was, and who had dreamt of being a published author and who had always wanted this, would be really, really proud. So let me just tell you a few things about what this book exactly is about. Is Love Enough is a contemporary love story that will perhaps make you rethink your perceptions about love. So since we have been talking a lot about culture today, so if we say in today, like in the Indian culture, love has always been, we have had things like Saat Samundar Paar Mein Tere Piche Piche Aa Gayi, or we have like Saat Janmon Ka Saath, and Tum Pyar Ke Liye Mar Jaungi, Mit Jaungi, and things like that. But this is a contemporary thing where there are two major things that are being equalized, that is love and self-respect. When it comes to love and self-respect, what would you choose, or how would you choose? Is love enough to actually sustain any relationship? Is it love a 4-letter word, or is love more than what it actually is? It is actually a book. The book is actually a journey of Riddhima and Kabir, the two main protagonists, who are on their way to find love and to see if they eventually fall in love with each other. And the book talks about is love, what happens after they find love, and is love enough to make them live the life together. Their journey is filled with lots of innocence, love, heartbreak, regrets, moments of joys and tears, and much more. The major best part, or the differentiating part of this book is, again, something that had motivated me when I was a kid. It was like, I had always wondered, back then, all the major love stories were always written from the perspective of a male protagonist. And there were hardly times when a female wrote it, or there were hardly times when the emotions of a female came out. So since then, I had always thought that when I write a book, I'll have a female protagonist, and her emotions, her thoughts, her feelings would be portrayed correctly. So yeah, I believe when you read the book, you will understand, and I'll be waiting for everyone to, you know, give me the answer to my question: is love enough? The book will be live on Amazon from tomorrow, and you can order your copies from there. And also, I would be great to, you know, send authored signed copies to everyone present over here. So you can just DM direct message me on Instagram. On my handle, author Kanya. Yeah, that's right. So Kanya has now officially turned into author Kanya, which was always a dream. So I'll be waiting for your direct messages, and I would be glad to share the author signed copies with every one of you. And because it's all my faculties and the great people over here whom I have always respected, I would be very honored if you could read, share your feedback and reviews about the book, which would
Sure, Sukanya. What I will do, I will coordinate with you, and I will get the copy, and we will do the needful. Thank you so much for sharing insights and your hard work regarding this particular book. Moving further, we have with us Mr. Dhirendra Singh. Sir has a total experience of 18 years in the field of strategic media planning and research. Before starting his career in Lintas Group, he has worked with IMRB International as analysis department for 2.5 years. During his tenure at IMRB, he worked on various industry level market research like NRS and commissioned media project. At Lintas Media Group, in the initial years, he worked with CME, Center of Media Excellence, a specialized research and technology division for 2 years. Currently, he is the Senior Vice President Business at Initiative IPG Media Brand Work and is responsible for strategizing media investment of clients from diverse categories like auto, FMCG, luggage, durables, paint, tourism, mutual funds, stationaries, etc. He has contributed in various industry awards and has been credited with awards and accolades at industry forum for the explanatory work created for the brand. May I now request Dhirendra sir to take over the stage and share insight about the topic that has been the theme of this event.
First of all, thank you, Partha, for introducing. And it's an honor to be at the GCSE platform. And what I will be doing today is basically sharing my corporate experience to the topic that we have, which is the culture and its reflection on advertising. Now, a lot has been spoken about this. Mr. Kumar has spoken about this, but let me just give some more glimpse from my experience perspective. So why does culture matter? Because culture is informed by societal customs and traditions. It is the social behavior of particular people of society. Hence, culture in a way affects everything, which also includes advertising. When advertising professionals don't take this seriously, things can actually go very wrong. The essence of successful advertising is convincing people that a product is meant for them. By purchasing it, they will receive some benefit, whether lifestyle, status, convenience, or financial. However, when an advertising campaign is taken abroad, the target audience typically have different values and perceptions as to what enhances status or what constitutes convenience. As such, this differences make the original advertising campaign defined. Now, messages, symbols, rituals, and even colors can have significantly different meanings and messages across cultures. And hence it is important or critical to any cross-cultural, global, or advertising or international advertising campaign that a thorough understanding of the target culture is required. Now, understanding the way in which the culture is communicated allows the advertising campaign to speak to the potential customer in a way they understand and appreciate. Hence, it is critical to make the cultural connections. We initially pay a lot of attention for cultural connections and have built proprietary framework to reveal insight into the psyche that underpins consumer attitudes. we categorize them into 9 cultural dimensions, which are split between how people feel and how people act. This cultural dimension measurement tool, in fact, helps us or enables us to understand the cultural needs of the values of the group, and as a group, it is called target audience. The cultural dimension which dominates a group of audience will determine how that group processes and responds to a message. For example, what is seen as new and exciting to some it might be a reflection of what is known in certain sources and not welcomed as a result. In other words, the way in which you see the world, which is called the cultural context, can significantly color or respond to it. Having an understanding of the cultural context of a group.
Virendra sir, we are not able to hear you properly. Hello?
Your bandwidth is very low. You may put off the video and just speak. You may put off the video and just speak. Very low bandwidth.
Is better now?
Yeah, better. Yes, speak.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for letting me know. Okay, so I think I'll start by, I'm not sure how much I have lost, but I will talk about that.
No, continue. We have heard you. It was not very clear. Continue.
Okay. So I was speaking about that, how it is critical to make the cultural connections. I think I spoke about that initially. We pay a lot of attention for cultural connections and have built various proprietary framework to reveal the insight into the psyche that underpin the consumer attitudes. You know, this cultural dimensions helps us to identify how people feel and how people act. Yeah. And the cultural dimensions which dominate a group of audience will determine how that group process and respond to message. For example, what is seen as a new and exciting to some might be seen as a rejection of what is known and certain to others and not welcomed as a result. In other words, what I'm speaking about is that the way in which we see the world can significantly color our response to a stimulus. Having an understanding of the cultural context of a group or the target audience helps us to better understand what they behave, the way they do, and it can help us make informed predictions on how they're likely to respond in the future. And this helps us in terms of determining the greater insight into an audience, helping us develop more powerful media strategies. Now, for a moment, let's talk about the dimension, the cultural dimensions, which is identity. Now, it measures the strength of a nation's self-image. Now, there are fixed societies have very clear identities rooted in the tradition. They see no reason to change or evolve. Example, I can take example of a country like in Colombia. However, the flexible countries are always looking to adapt and improve. They might have traditional value, but they're interested in moving with the times. For example, I would take, Japan. Now, advertising that focuses on the individual success, independence, and stressing the word I would be received negatively in countries that teamwork is considered a positive quality. So we need to see things differently, and hence researching our target audience or the target market is extremely important before you run an ad campaign. If you think you know about the market you're targeting, then also you need to research for it. And another thing to remember when looking at the different culture is that the perception of the world and what they see can vary vastly. Yeah. So therefore, what we have learned from the whatever work that we have done is that the interplay of cultural dimensions in advertising is hugely complex. Ads can perform very differently, even in cultures which are perceived to be more or less similar. I think this is the same point which Mr. Kamath also mentioned about this. And the third point is that we need to examine the cultural resonance on an ad by ad basis because every ad can perform differently. Yeah. And the fourth point is that we need to know your market. We need to know the market, which is what is attractive to our target audience and what motivates them. Therefore, what brands should do. The emotional connection with the consumer matters a lot in advertising. I think we have been speaking about this, especially the digital one, because the consumers have the power to decide whether they want to watch or skip something. And in fact, we have seen that most brands seek to bring cheer in the eye of the consumer through some social messages. How the best ads are those which actually challenge the cultural orthodoxy, and brands should work towards creating a culture context and then weave in the advertising message. This is what I think the message from my side that what brands should do. There are various examples. In fact, Mr. Kumar has spoken about a lot about different brands who are taking or leveraging the cultural context and weaving the advertising messages. Now, some of them, my examples or my favorite are like, Fog. We'll use a cultural lingo that kya chal raha hai, which is nothing but the cultural context of how we greet each other in India. Kya chal, that's a typical cultural lingo. The another example which I can put is a very recent, a budding e-commerce player, which is Meesho, where they came up with this campaign called Sahi Se Lagao. And over here, if you look at the culture context, was how Indians have the tendency to bargaining and look for better pricing. Yeah. So these are some of the examples of how brands have used the cultural context after having understood what is prevalent, what is working for the target audience, and basis that they have weaved in the advertising message. Yeah. That's it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your kind words and sharing insights about brand and its culture and its impact on advertising. Now I request Professor Ujol Kumar Chaudhary, Secretary of GMEC, to kindly give the concluding remark.
Indeed, very learning session. I was noting some of my key learnings on the side in the chat box, and I was also sharing some of the key insights and a couple of slides in the groups where I know my friends are interested in advertising, because all may not be here present at this point of time. I'm happy to note that almost at certain point up to 55 people were live here, and there would be a good number in YouTube, which we will know later on. So what is significant, and again, I apologize for my sore throat. I'm in Kathmandu in a very low temperature over the last 8 days. So if I have to, in very few words, summarize this evening, so Subhas Kamath started on a very high pitch with a very focused perspective that how culture, how advertising is rooted in the culture of societies. He very nicely talked about the most fundamental benefit that surf washes clean was enough once upon a time for ad messaging, but not anymore. It moved on to understanding the unique selling proposition, USP of the brand. But after some time, with too many brands around, the USP also could not connect with the consumer, because many a time the USPs looked similar among brands in the same category. So the focus became more on the people in the category insights, and that advertising took up as a core focus area for messaging. But very soon, with too many brands in the same category, even category insights would not come of use. And people moved to advertising industry, moved to understanding society, culture, a broader ecosystem, symbols, and thereby they started taking a new route to messaging in advertising and branding. Culture is what human beings do unconsciously or subconsciously every day. So advertising started tapping into this unconscious and subconscious behavior. Very rightly, he took the example of Walkman. How Walkman for the Japanese is a tool by which he can enjoy music without disturbing others. And the same tool, Walkman, for the Americans is a tool where he can enjoy his music without others disturbing him. So how this same thing becomes too different. Very well said about Fevicol, the cultural context to strong bonding. The strong bonding message was taken by Fevicol. We know Piyush Pandey's Indian, rural, and even in some cases urban bonding concept was taken as a series of ads. Amazon, Aur Dikhao campaign, very well said, very Indian cultural norm, Aur Dikhao. Cadbury's, Kuch Meeta Ho Jaye, how the brand is actually expanding into future strategy of getting into the entire mithai domain, perhaps, as you go ahead. Ad impact is a function of the use of cultural norms of a society, he rightly said. Strategy rooted in cultural insights would be always successful. He took the example of Thanda, matlab Coca-Cola, because in India, people name the colas as cold drink. That is the commonest word. So the entire domain of cold drink, thanda drink, has been usurped by the slogan Thanda Matlab Coca-Cola. TOI Lead India campaign very rightly said, search of new breed of professional positive image of politicians, and connected it with the rise of Aam Aadmi Party from the rank outsiders who were professionals, very rightly said. And overall, Subhas Kamath, in very simple language with examples, illustrated this synergistic, mutually beneficial role of advertising messaging and cultural norms. Dr. Mangesh, the winner of the eminent educationist in the field of media and communication tonight, he actually brought in a new concept called digital mutant, which is more engaged than a digital migrant, perhaps less engaged than a digital native. Digital native because he's born into the digital world in a way. Very rightly he brought forth how brand colors and cultural roots are very well explained. The color and the culture context, Stanchard's blue and green, Bank of India's, Baroda's orange, HSBC's red, many he took examples to explain how colors represent culture of a particular society. Ad messaging focusing on each individual customer is now the increasing way of messaging. Each individual, every customer receiving the message should think it is for me, it's purely for me. So, and very rightly said, as an educationist, a true blue educationist, that are the institutes temples of knowledge or just commercial service providers? It's a question that we all keep pondering over, no doubt. His prior, and his very right, prior experience in industry of media and communication would really an effective mentoring as you go ahead. The next speaker, who used slides and fabulous, he actually gives a masterclass on how slides should be made. Just 5 slides or 4 slides, and a whole book material of a book is told. If this can be written into a book, it would be Why Digital Transformations Fail. Under that title, a book can be written from the 5 slides that he has brought in. He talked about, very rightly he said, 84% organizations which try for digital transformation actually fail, only 16% succeed. And they fail because one of the building blocks of digital transformation is missed out. Which are the building blocks? Strategy, plus engagement, plus innovation, plus technology, plus data and analytics. If one of these 5 is missed out, transformation falls. And he has explained in detail, I'm not getting into that. The slides are superb. And it says these 5 building blocks will lead to digital transformation only if they are in tune, in consonance, in tandem with people, their culture, their leadership, and their skills. I really appreciate this young lady, Sukanya De, very well presented. Your exuberance and energy and smile all along was very infectious. And keep telling stories. Stories enlighten, stories inspire. Thank you. And Professor Kanchan Luthra spoke on a very important tool of understanding history, documentary. We shall look forward to your full paper, madam. And all these papers are being published, as you know, perhaps already. There is an editorial board for that. But anyway, we are looking forward to your paper when you bring in. Last but not the least, in spite of a few glitches on the audio, Mr. Dhirendra Singh brought forth how advertising messaging is not only taking the insights of culture, they are also building culture in return. How part of building culture and subcultures comes from advertising messaging, rituals, colors, symbols reiterated and taken forward. He has also talked about proprietary tools to delve inside cultural dimension of consumer insights. Yes, there are many IT-enabled, AI-enabled tools that are coming now. Even social listening tools is a component there. What motivates you? What motivates your consumer segments? You means the brand. If they don't match, they don't gel well. So to understand what motivates your consumer segments is significant, and research would bring forth this aspect for the brands to do their messaging. Sometimes challenging cultural orthodoxy, something that a large number of the younger people would perhaps negate, also is a good style of advertising. These are some of the key points. I know this 5-minute summary would not do justice to the almost 2 hours program, but still some of the key points. This video, as you know, we shall be editing each of these videos as well of the program into 1 hour compact. The YouTube link and the edited video must be taken by all GMEC members to their students, particularly students of marketing, advertising, branding, and communication. Thank you very much, Partha, my very dear former student, former colleague, and all-time friend, for organizing such a beautiful program with so much of meaningful content and so much of, and so nice to see a young girl like Sukanya De, to the elders who have been here. Very, very erudite talks of some of the speakers, also very simple things of life, simple truths of life, all combined together, blended together synergistically. And synergistically, the industry, the researcher, the young writer, the global stalwart, the national stalwart, and educationist, all brought together, academics and the industry brought together. And thank you once again, Dr. Ambarish, for initiating today the program, our very active, energetic, inspiring Vice President of Global Media Education Council. With this, we bring this session to an end. But before that, there must be a very, what should I say, heartfelt vote of thanks from none other than the moderator and the leader of today's evening, Partha Pratim Samant. Over to you.
Thank you so much, sir. I would like to begin by thanking our President of GMEC, Professor K.G. Suresh, and the President of RSET Campus, Sri Ashokji Saraf, for being a constant and strong pillar of strength and support for all our endeavors. I also take this opportunity to thank our GMEC Secretary, Professor Ujol Kumar Chaudhary, Principal of DGMC, Dr. Ami Vora, the Vice President and Convener of Research Review Board, GMEC, Dr. Uma Shankar Pandey, and Vice President of GMEC, Dr. Ambarish Saxena, for giving us a model support, the encouragement, the constantly motivating us to do better, to conceive a qualitative program, and helping us to structure this event. My gratitude to the tireless work put by our Head Outreach University, Mr. Ajit Das, and Ms. Sinakshi Kakkar from edinbox.com, marketing and social media team of GMAC, Ms. Manushri Maiti, and her team, marketing and social media team of DGMC, Mr. Hardik and his team. I am also thankful to Ms. Nymphia Chatterjee and Utkarsh for all support. Last but not the least, thank you dear students, media professionals, and all dignitaries for making this event successful. Our next event is scheduled on 18th November 2021 from 7:30 p.m. The theme for the event is Misinformation During COVID-19 Pandemic, Way and Strategies to Combat It, will be moderated by my colleague, Dr. Rubal Kanojia. Thank you. Take care and stay safe.
All those who are here today, even at this point of time, either on Zoom or on YouTube, please do attend these programs. 75 programs. This was only 12th one. Only a dozen has gone. 75 programs brought to you with so much of diversity of content, people's backgrounds, and different age groups as well. And this would be a great journey of communication, in a way, a tribute to the 75 years of India's independence. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Ujolji, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Partha. Bye.